Okay, everyone hear me okay? We have wine going, and I wish I had my glass there. I will get the glass of wine when I exit. So I'm excited to be here today. I'm coming from Washington, D.C. I'm here on my own. There was a woman that told me to get involved in Hack in the Box. I said, sure. I wasn't as familiar with it. I've been able to meet some really great people from a lot of different parts of the world, different domains of cybersecurity. So what I'm hoping today is that this discussion sort of rounds out everything that we heard. I heard Matteo talk about different Wi-Fi penetration testing, learned a lot about NFC from Sal. There was just so much in this conference that I think it's important that when we started off really broad from Michael in the yesterday morning, seems like 3 weeks ago almost, how do we bring it back to sort of that, what are our next steps? We took the deep dive, let's come back up on top. All right, so let's go back about 8 years. 2010, we saw what I'm going to call the era of availability attacks. We had Aurora, we had DDoS attacks. And what was our response? Our response was to protect. We improved from firewall to antivirus. We moved beyond that stage. We now said, okay, we need dedicated people in cybersecurity for XYZ. The thing is, we got into security silos. We got budgets that just exploded in a lot of different communities, but we didn't have that cross-pollination. 2014 rolled around, and it's the era of the data breach. One company after another, I don't have to name them all. We all know all the different companies in the 2014-2015 era. We had the confidentiality era of attacks. Our response was to get better at detection, which we did. The SIM tools that we had, the IDS and the IPS, all improved our security defenses. 2018 now, we're getting better at response. The word on the town is resilience. The thing is, now we're in the era of integrity attacks, and detecting those are much harder. We're concerned about voter tampering. We're concerned about the transaction integrity of different mechanisms. So if we've improved each stage, the attacks, of course, we know have changed. So what I'm hoping today is, where do we go next? What did we miss, and where are we going to go? I like to look at cybersecurity as a practice of risk management. That's what it is. We cannot reduce the risk, or we cannot eliminate the risk, we can only reduce it. So how do we increase our maturity while improving our agility? Because as we mature, back to those silos, we're going to get really good at one thing. We're going to have really, really good web app pen testers, or we're going to have really good crypto people, which we need, but we need to remain agile to be able to respond quickly. So in order to manage risk, I'm going to show a few examples of how we can improve our maturity and try to increase our agility. I have a few principles I want to keep in mind, though, as we chat about this today. The first is that we need to be able to model our attack surface better. I don't see that as something that happened in that 2010 to 2018 era. We talk about it a lot. One of my main practices is threat modeling, and that's one way that we can start to look and understand our attack surface in greater granularity. The predictive snake oil. I love the talks of machine learning. I believe in machine learning. I believe in AI. But just because it's going to block and tackle everything, no, that's not so true. How do we make sure that we do not fall into that snake oil trap? And back to those security silos, I am a big proponent of cross-pollinating. I did not come from a classical trained technical profession. I was not a comp sci major. I am not a reverse malware engineer. I came from a poli-sci background. I do think that has helped me look at cybersecurity issues the way I do. Okay, that was the preamble. If it's not so good, take another glass of wine, but we're getting into the cool stuff now. Okay, the here and now, kill chain. We're all familiar with the kill chain. If not, you probably wouldn't have shown up at this presentation or Vincent's right before. We're all familiar with the attack surface, or at least the concept of it. We do talk about attack surfaces differently. I want to show one way that we can start to build them together. I'm not the first one to do this, but I do think that this is going to add on to the community's discussion. Okay. a little blurry, that's okay. The kill chain. The one from Lockheed, we love it. It's great. We can live and breathe it. I personally like to use the Mandiant version. I find it's a little bit more helpful when I'm looking from an attacker perspective. If we're a pen tester, if we're a red teamer, it's very easy. It's also easy to communicate it to the executive audiences as well. What I'm going to try to build on is this middle one. So we have the attack, the kill chain phases, and then we have detect, deny, disrupt, degrade, deceive. Great. Those are all pretty vague. Like, what am I supposed to do with those? How am I supposed to apply them? My goal here is that we are able to understand our attack surface using the kill chain, flip it on its head, and now make it a defender's framework. So we're going to rethink this kill chain. Okay. Kill chain up front, attack path. So far, so good. It's the way we normally think of it. Let's say, as an attacker, I want to circumvent authentication to get to an internal app and a service, something of that sort. Let's start, these ones in black are just ways that we can do reconnaissance, nothing in particular. All right, but sniff traffic and scan internally, that seems interesting enough. Let's play that one out. All right, at the next stage, we could capture a hash. Ooh, I don't know, now that's getting even more interesting. Toolkit at command, let's use maybe, we can use various tools to either capture the hash or move along. There's plenty of different tools, Mimikatz, you name it. And then we can impersonate the user with the hash, obtain domain admin, perform that action. We have our generic attack path. Okay, we've now established from as an attacker who wants to circumvent authentication, as an attacker, I want to use pass the hash. I've narrowed it down one level from there because we could do a lot of different ways to circumvent authentication. From there, we could say 100 different ways. I really like the MITRE's attack framework. If you guys aren't familiar with it, look it up. It's great. Tons of different techniques and procedures for different stages of the kill chain. All right, so we have our illustrative purposes only, pretty colors that get us from compromise that workstation, our hash, and now we have domain admin. Okay, we've all agreed that we need to protect against pass the hash, and this is just one example. You could pick your favorite attack path. So we all know that we have to protect it. The question is, how do we protect it? Assume we have Batman and Wonder Woman at our companies. And instead of bouncing emails back and forth, we've enlisted members of the Justice League. I selected Wonder Woman and Batman before, and then Justice League was playing on the plane. I was like, this is a sign. All right. And there's a really great quote that Batman says to Wonder Woman, says, we don't have time for a controls group. So Batman is instinctive. Batman he's rich. Bruce Wayne is rich. That's sort of his superpower, if you will. He has big tools to just crush things. While Wonder Woman, I'm not saying man versus woman. I'm not trying to imply anything there, but she's a little bit more methodical. She wants to get the truth out of people with the lasso. The thing is, we have different personalities within our companies. We have different groups that want to do the right thing. Our superheroes want to fight evil, but we have different approaches. So let's see how Wonder Woman and Batman would protect against pass the hash. I love frameworks. I think that they're a really helpful way to go about making decisions. So this is one that I've been playing around for some time now. The top row, we have our tactical, and the bottom, we have our strategic. Tactical, we think about as mainly those of us in the room right now, the network defenders, the security engineers, the architects. Strategic is a little bit more of we have to make that business value case to our executives. How much is it going to cost? How long is it going to implement? How many people are we going to affect? But the thing is, we have an instinctive measures, and we have impulsive. Instinctive and intentional. So that instinctive or that impulsive is that it's fear. It's like, we got to patch it right now. We got to take it offline. And then, but in terms of the intelligence that we might have, it may be for a heads up. Or if we wait a little bit more time, we can have true actionable information. Or in terms of the timeliness, again, is it for situational awareness of, we have a botnet coming from Russia, let's say, or name your country. But in terms of what is the quality, what is the confidence that we have in that data? So instead of saying, like, we can't block sometimes we do block entire countries from a defense of a deny by default, but we could also say we want this specific IP, or here is the indicator. So when coming through the countermeasures, usually I used to start with ease of mitigation or cost of mitigation, and then the severity likelihood. We're all familiar with severity and likelihood, but I do think that those are very subjective. They can be used within organizations and they're helpful, but if we break down what they mean, we really have to get to what the data is first before we even can get to the severity and likelihood. All right. So for the most part, we had Batman from an instinctive and Wonder Woman, from the informed group. So let's take the controls that they selected. I picked the whole smorgasbord of controls that could be available for pass the hash here, and now it's lined up against not only the attack path, but the stages of the kill chain. We see that both could help against the reconnaissance and compromise phase, and then we also have some that could help against when it comes to maintaining the presence or installation or command. When we come to actually determining if something happened, it seemed that Wonder Woman was the one that could protect us in that regard. The thing is, if we put them all together, we have a really complete coverage. So the thing is, when we come to we want to be able, as a defender, to be able to use the whole stream of controls available. We have to be both instinctive and we have to be informed. We have to be tactical and we have to be strategic. The tactical is playing in this world. Once we get more strategic, we can get a little bit here. I'm going to go back, actually. Let me go back here real quick. So when we look at here, from change default credentials, disable remote logins, two-factor for just the domain admins, let's close it off immediately. But if we look at Wonder Woman's monitoring, reducing the number of local admins, finding who is a local admin, patching, auditing for commands, like these are strategic efforts. Like this isn't going to happen overnight. This isn't going to happen in a week. So when we put it all together, when we actually have them both working together, we're able to cover the entire attack path, the entire kill chain. What I did here was select some countermeasures that I think that I've seen in other organizations at work. We can't implement everything. It's just not possible. But here are the ones that if we actually had both groups working together, as a defender, we can protect against the known attack path. Okay. So that sounds good. But where's the how? A lot of times, at least I see it, is do this or do that. But the question is how. So access controls against that. All right, what type of access controls? At the network layer, at the user level? One thing to keep in mind is that once you've defined your attack surface, you've defined your attack path, you've said what controls are available, we have to start to engineer. So we've rethought how to think of the kill chain, but we now need to think about engineering. So the design phase of the architecture phase is over. This was the architecture phase, the design phase. The engineering phase is crucial. So everybody could think of it a little bit differently. I could get way more specific, but my point is don't stop at just the design phase. Not only just don't stop at the at the engineering phase, we have to talk about testing. Targeted testing in particular. So we have our patch metrics. We say, all right, we have this vulnerability or has been remediated and patched, and we have a coverage against these workstations, and we're scanning externally at a whatever percentage, whatever frequency. But what about something like pass the hash here, which is common, we all know about it. How do we test against that? And I would say is that there are ways no matter the size of the organization. So these are a few different examples. The middle here is Bloodhound, where it provides the different hops to a domain admin. Again, these are all traditionally penetration testing tools, but let's make them a defender's framework. I came across Detection Lab. It's basically a Windows environment with a whole sort of different GPOs already enabled. There's a mini little Splunk instance. Basically, let's test against the controls we have in an environment. If you don't have a dedicated lab, there's ones available. The red teaming and adversary simulation toolkit, what I really like is that they haven't said it they've used the kill chain again, but instead of as an attacker, as a red teamer, which changes it just a little bit to actually say what those controls are and what those toolkits are. So if we've rethought, we've designed, we've engineered and tested, we have to talk about operations. My goal here is that we each might be at different stages of here, but if we don't have the full life cycle, something will break down. So the blue team kill chain, I came across this as actually a presentation while I was building this deck. I said, did I steal their content? Did they steal mine? It's not the case at all. But I'm pulling it out. It's from Microsoft. It was from a former RSA presentation. And I think it's really valuable in this last stage because it really does talk about detection and response. So for each stage, for recon, gather, delivery, detect, foothold, alert, do we have the controls that we have designed mapped back to these stages? I would say that I don't see many organizations doing it this way. I think it takes a lot of time. I think it takes a lot of energy, and more importantly, it takes a lot of collaboration. But if we think about the most common attack paths against our known attack surface, we can really start to think about, do we have the actual ways to detect, respond, and deter an attacker? All right. Some caveats, though. I picked pass the hash because I've seen it a lot in penetration tests. In fact, it was a rinse, wash, repeat in a lot of red team engagements that I've seen. Historical cases could also be, again, what the MITRE attack framework or what another group might use as a defined set of common attacks. So the problem here is that it's still manual, and still we're relying on things that we know. Thing is, the zero-day exploits are out there. The conversation yesterday was really interesting. But there are too many organizations that are still failing at what is known. We have to worry about the unknown, but there's a lot on the known that we still need to protect. Defense is hard. I think I've chatted with a lot of red teamers, pen testers here. It's fun. It's interesting. You get to break things. You get to manipulate people and systems. But I have to say defense is really hard. Architecture and engineering is really hard because you usually have to work with the business who wants something done immediately or the customer that needs something. From a network defender and operator, it's not fun at 2 o'clock in the morning to make sure that the green light is still on. This is not a predictive tool. This is not something that I can plug into a system and output an answer. There are some machine learning. There are some ways, using Bloodhound can go about looking at your network one way. We can use tools to aid us, but the tool itself is not the sole solution. I use this example here that's a traditional network on-prem example. If I were to do the cloud, I think it would look very differently. So something to keep in mind is that not all, just like all attacks are not created equal, not all exploits are created equal, not all environments are created equal. So similar to what I said also before on defense is hard and the drive of historical cases is that this is a manual approach. We have to use our brains. We cannot rely on the output from another team member, from another organization. We usually have to come back at it on our own. So if I look at all of this, of how do we understand our attack surface? Modeling it is the utmost important. I do think threat modeling is a crucial way. I think that we can have different tools to aid us, but a lot of I was just having this chat earlier today. We don't know our assets. We don't know what's sometimes externally facing. And until we get there, we do not know how to protect ourselves. We can't protect against what we don't know. So model our attack surface to understand it, to then engineer the controls, to test the attack path, and then finally establish it into operations. Get that full circle. And I really liked this cartoon about avoiding that prediction and this drive towards automating everything. So if I had to say, where are we going? What did we miss? Is that we missed the collaboration. And I think that we're starting to get there, but I think that there's some more work to do. So if I had to say, if we're in the era of CIA, we're going to still see the same types of attacks. Again, it's the triad. But what do we have moving forward is collaborate and to engineer. So those are my 3 little takeaways. Every presentation needs 3 different things: rethink, design, and engineer. And that would be my message to everybody here, is that to take a step back, use the tools that we have available today, flip them on their head, and see how we can better be defenders. Thank you so much. I welcome any questions or comments. If not, I'm sure there's some wine out there with everybody's name on it.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the floor? Probably works better with wine in hand. Thank you very much, Alexis.
Thank you.